2 years ago, track had already crowned its next king, Gout Gout, a teenager from Queensland, Australia, with a stride so long that grown professionals next to him looked like they were jogging. People compared him to Usain Bolt while he was still racing in high school. By early 2026, he owned the under-20 200-meter world record at 19.67 seconds. He looked untouchable. Then an 18-year-old from San Antonio, Texas, walked onto a track in Oregon that Gout was actually supposed to be racing on. His name is Tate Taylor. By the end of the summer, the whole story had flipped. This is how the most anticipated showdown in young track became a rivalry that, somehow, still hasn't actually happened. To understand why Tate Taylor is such a big deal, you have to understand the shadow he stepped into. Gout Gout wasn't just fast, he was a phenomenon. Back in December 2024, when he was still a schoolboy, he ran the 200 meters in 20.04 seconds at the Australian All-Schools Championships. That made him the fastest under-16 in history, and it beat a time Usain Bolt ran at the same age. Bolt went 20.13. Gout went quicker, and the comparisons only got louder from there. His coach, Di Shepherd, watched the hype snowball. Former Olympian and Athletics Australia president Jane Fleming came out and said if she'd ever seen anyone run like Bolt and built like Bolt, it was this kid. Then came the number that mattered most. At the Australian Championships earlier in 2026, Gout ran the 200 in 19.67 seconds and set a brand new under-20 world record. To put that in context, the only teenager in history who's ever run faster is American Arion Knighton, and his 19.49 was never even ratified. So on paper, Gout Gout was sitting at the top of the entire under-20 world, alone. Australia had its Bolt. The sport had its future. Everybody agreed on it. And when there's that much agreement about one kid, there's usually one thing missing from the conversation. Nobody's really asking who could beat him. But 8,000 miles away, someone was quietly building a case. While the cameras were pointed at Gout, Tate Taylor was doing something almost as ridiculous, just with a fraction of the attention. Taylor grew up in San Antonio, Texas, and ran for Harlan High School. And in May 2025, he did something no American high schooler had ever done. He ran the 100 meters in 9.92 seconds. That's not a college time or a pro time. That's a 17-year-old breaking the 10-second barrier, becoming the youngest American ever to do it, and erasing the previous high school record in the process. Then he just kept stacking records. In January 2026, he ran the fastest indoor 300 meters in American high school history, 32.45. A few months later, at the Tom Jones Invitational in Florida, he ran the 200 in 20.05 and broke a high school record that belonged to Noah Lyles, an Olympic 100-meter champion. Here's the part that gives away who Taylor really is, though. When it was time to go pro or go to college, he didn't chase the money. He signed with Texas Tech. Noah Lyles turned pro straight out of high school back in 2016. Taylor looked at that path and decided he wanted to build slower and go further. So going into the summer of 2026, you had two teenagers with generational talent on two different continents. One was the anointed one. The other was the kid with the chains and the quiet confidence who kept telling his dad and his coach the same thing. If somebody's going to beat me, they're gonna have to run something crazy. And on July 4th, the universe handed him the perfect stage to prove it. There was just one small problem with how he got there. The turn Tate Taylor wasn't even supposed to be in that race. The 2026 Prefontaine Classic in Eugene, Oregon is the only American stop on the Diamond League, the top professional circuit on the planet. The 200-meter field was stacked with grown men, Olympic champions, sub-20 sprinters, and one of the athletes originally slated to run it was Gout Gout himself, before an injury forced him to pull out. So Tate Taylor, a high schooler, slid into the professional field in the lane that opened up, Lane 3. He'd actually trained in Lane 3 all week, and what happened next is the moment this whole rivalry became real. Taylor was back and forth at the 50-meter mark. Then he started reeling them in. He passed the early leader with less than 60 meters to go, held off the reigning Olympic 200-meter champion Letziel Tebogo down the stretch, and crossed the line first in 19.75 seconds, into a headwind. Think about what that actually means. An 18-year-old beat the reigning Olympic champion, ran the fastest 200 ever by an American high schooler, and did it with the wind blowing straight into his face. Tebogo finished second in 1993, And, to his credit, congratulated the kid and called it a learning day.
I feel like there's more that I could have done, right? But nonetheless, congratulations to Tate Taylor. He's coming up all right.
That 19.75 made Taylor the third fastest under-20 sprinter in history over 200 meters. And who are the only two names ahead of him? Arion Knighton, with that unratified 1949, and Gout Gout at 1967. So think about what just happened. Taylor took the lane a hurt Gout Gout left empty and used it to plant himself directly behind Gout on the all-time list. The gap between them was now 0.08 of a second, and Taylor was just getting warmed up. 1 month later, the World Under-20 Championships came to that same track in Eugene. This was supposed to be it, the showdown. Gout versus Taylor, finally, on the sport's biggest youth stage. And once again, it didn't happen. Gout had skipped the Commonwealth Games specifically to be ready for these championships, but he tore his hamstring in training beforehand and had to withdraw. Athletics Australia backed him, shutting down the rest of his 2026 season to recover. So the door was wide open, and Tate Taylor ran straight through it and did something that had never been done in the 40-year history of these championships. First, the 100 meters on Thursday. Taylor won gold in a personal best 9.94 seconds, holding off Jamaica's Gary Card. That time put him joint 5th on the all-time under-20 list. Then, on Saturday, the 200. Taylor blew the field apart and ran 19.83, a championship record, finishing meters clear of his own teammate. That made him the first American man ever to sweep both individual sprints at a World Under-20 Championships. The last American to even win the Under-20 100 title was Noah Lyles, back in 2016. And then the finish. On Sunday, Taylor anchored the American 4x100 relay and ran the team to 38.116 seconds, a World Under-20 record, smashing a mark that had stood since 2021. 3 golds, 3 races. 1 Under-20 world record, and 2 championship or personal bests, the sprint treble. In 40 years, nobody had ever done all 3 at once. Even Noah Lyles, watching from the outside, jumped on social media to applaud him. The stadium announcer in Eugene started introducing Taylor as the fastest under-20 200-meter runner in the world.
Taylor, 19.75, the third fastest under-20 male 200-meter runner we've ever seen. And he beat an Olympic champion at his distance on this track this summer.
There's just one problem with that title. It isn't actually true yet, and that's where this gets complicated. Here's the thing the highlight reels leave out. That under-20 world record still belongs to Gout Gout, 19.67. It didn't move an inch all summer. Taylor's best is 19.75. On the clock, Gout is still the faster man on paper. So why is everyone calling Taylor the threat? 2 reasons. First, the conditions. Taylor ran his 19.75 into a headwind pushing against him, in a race where the wind was working overtime to slow him down. Gout ran his 19.67 with a strong tailwind at his back. A lot of track people ran the adjusted math and argued that, wind for wind, Taylor's run was actually the faster performance. That's a serious claim to make about the guy who holds the record. Second, and this is bigger, is consistency. Across more than 20 races in 2026, Tate Taylor never finished worse than 3rd. He beat an Olympic champion. He did the treble. He kept showing up and delivering on the biggest stages against the best available competition. Gout, for all his talent, spent the back half of the season on the sidelines, first pulling out of the Prefontaine, then out of the World Championships. And that's the honest problem with this rivalry. They have never actually lined up next to each other. Not once. Every time the schedule promises us Gout versus Taylor, an injury takes it away. So the argument for Gout is real, that when he's healthy, that 19.67 is still the fastest anyone his age has ever legally run. And the argument for Taylor is just as real, that a record means less when the guy across the world keeps racing pros and winning while you're rehabbing. For 2 years, the next Usain Bolt was a title with 1 name on it. Now it has 2, and the only way to settle it is to get these 2 teenagers into the same 8 lanes and let the clock decide. So where does this go from here? The senior stage is coming fast. There's a new World Athletics Championship in Budapest in September, and beyond that, the LA 2028 Olympics sitting on the horizon like a finish line neither of them has crossed yet. Gout Gout is taking the rest of this year to heal. Tate Taylor is heading to Texas Tech, telling anyone who'll listen that he just needs to be patient. One of them holds the record. the other holds the momentum, and the race that decides which one is really the future of the 200 meters still hasn't been run. So I want to hear it from you, Gout Gout or Tate Taylor. If they lined up tomorrow, who crosses the line first? Drop your pick in the comments and tell me why. If you want the full breakdown of Gout Gout's rise the moment he goes pro, that video's on the channel right now. Subscribe to Speed Academics so you're here when these two finally meet, because when they do, you're going to want to have seen this coming.